Okay. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Pacific Palisades Garden Club May meeting. And tonight we are here to welcome FormLA, and we have most of their team here. I'm not sure, I think most of them are here. Cassie and Kirk Aoyagi. Is that how you say your name? I hope it's the right pronunciation.
Aoyagi.
Aoyagi?
Yeah.
Aoyagi.
Okay. Kirk and Cassie Aoyagi and Danielle Killian and Isara Ongwiseth are here with us this evening, and they are going to present Throw Off Conformity, Living a Lawn-Free Life. And Danielle is going to introduce everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and pass to Danielle.
Thank you, Mary. And it's just so exciting to be here with you guys. We've been waiting for the tour to come back online, and it's really thrilling to think that you guys might be back out in the gardens next year. And in the meantime, we're happy to be with you here. And a real special thank you to Deanne for reaching out. It's been so long since we've connected, and it was really nice to know that you remembered us. It just really means a lot. And thank you very much for the introduction, Mary. We're really excited to talk about lawn replacements. It's something that the team has been doing for well over 20 years at this point, 20, maybe even over 25, good heavens. At the 20-year mark, we had replaced nearly 250,000 square feet of thirsty turf with native habitat. And that does a lot for people and for Los Angeles. So we'll get into all of that. And the primary experts who will be sharing information with you tonight, Mary had mentioned Isara Ongwiseth. He is a 4-time Sustainable Innovation Award-winning designer. He's our lead designer at FormLA Landscaping. And just the other week, he had a public garden client earn congressional recognition for the garden project that they did together. So it's a real treat to be able to share his knowledge. He is our lead designer and often has gardens on garden tour, including ones on the Pacific Palisades garden tour, and one this upcoming Saturday in Santa Monica. It's the Garden Conservancy's Open Days tour, and there are 4 gardens. His garden will be the urban wildlife habitat. So if you'd like to come by and meet Isara in person and explore the garden, we'd love to see you. And then Kirk Aoyagi is our co-founder and also internally known as our dream builder in chief. He has a way of looking at a design and really understanding what it's going to take to bring it to life in the best possible way. So if you have how-to questions, he's a great person to have on the line.
Yeah.
Well, first, I would like to thank Mary and Deanne and everyone at the Garden Club for this opportunity. I'm very, very excited and very, very happy to be here and look forward to sharing our knowledge and hope that you'll be very inspired after today's presentation. Thank you.
I'm as well. You know, talking about gardens is always fun for me, and you know, let's get into it.
So we thought we would divide our conversation up a little bit so we have a chance to engage with you along the way. We'll be looking at natural alternatives to lawns as well as synthetic turf, and then the wild concept of complete lawn freedom. And we'll roll through 3 different areas. We'll speak to what that looks like to replace a lawn, what it feels like, what life is like when you change out a lawn. And then also because the Pacific Palisades is in a wildlife urban interface zone, we wanted to talk a little bit about what it means to be wildfire ready and how that might impact a lawn removal process. So with that, I'll turn it over to the gents to speak to the status quo.
Okay. Thank you, Danielle. Well, traditional turf is something that we often default to. You look around your neighborhood, there's endless miles of just turf in front of everyone's home. Have to admit it, there's a certain appeal to it's that manicured green open space can be very pleasing to the eyes. But really, there are options out there that can bring much more enjoyment. But we often default to turf when we, don't let ourselves explore a little more. And sometimes, often client would ask us to incorporate some type of lawn so that their kids can play balls on. That was one of the reasons that people would choose lawn. Perhaps there are some other reasons. It could be just aesthetics that they love, or maybe it's an economic reasons.
Right. So as you can see in these pictures, the lawn kind of is like the ground plane framing the architecture of the building. And how I like to look at it is, it can be a little boring. What we like to do is to accentuate the house with different types of plants, have a gradual building of plants in front of the house, still leaving the architecture open, but also just adding a little interest, a little a life to the design, and it can still be usable as well. So I think it can be much more pretty and usable, and all around probably a better design choice.
Right. And another thing that we all are experienced with is drought, the needs to conserve water. So oftentimes people would, choose to look at perhaps using synthetic turf. And there are many, manufacturers out there, different grades, different qualities, and even some of the highest quality looking turf that look almost real. But when you look at it close or long enough, it's still really, it still looks fake, and there's something devoid of life about it that almost like you are looking at the Twilight Zone movie,
Right.
in a way.
So, you look at this image, and it's synthetic turf. It's green, but like Isara said, it's lifeless. There's different things about synthetic turf that can be unhealthy for you and for the environment. It's also somewhat boring. One of the things that we did in the Pacific Palisades is our client had synthetic turf, and she was having some respiratory issues. A lot of people think the synthetic turf, that's the plastic, and but there's also road base, which is ground up asphalt and concrete, and the combination of the plastics and the asphalt. Once we removed all of that stuff off the site, our client started noticing she was feeling better. So there's different things that you can do to than synthetic turf.
That's correct. In addition to, health concerns, but the good news is we have options, for you to work with when it comes to alternative to traditional lawn or synthetic. For example, this dune sedge, we have used this material. Dune sedge is a California native ground cover that exists all throughout different elevations from the coastal up to the mountain. So it can handle varieties of microclimate, making it a very desirable and flexible plant materials to use to create this lawn alternatives. It takes a lot less water than traditional lawn and has very interesting characteristics. And Kirk has this material at his house, as in this picture. So Kirk, tell us what wonderful things you learned from this.
So this image, my son, that's my son running through the garden. The sedge can take traffic, it can take animal use. It can grow wild like this image, or it can be cut and manicured like a traditional lawn. One of the things that's nice about it, if it does get a pee spot from a dog, it spreads, so it'll fix the spots if any come about, and it spreads by underground rhizomes. So it's a neat thing to use.
Yeah, I also wanted to add one thing about the dune sedge is that oftentimes our 9 out of 10 clients of ours request a manicure looks. But when they saw the longer, the wispier looks of dune sedge, they all fell in love with it and requested our maintenance team to keep it that way, and because it's so inviting and soft. We still cut it back like maybe 2 to 3 times a year to encourage the materials to regenerate, and so that it's looking new and inviting again. And talking about inviting and soft, here is another plant materials that we use as lawn alternative, which is yarrow. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with yarrow as a flowering perennials that you use in shrub beds. And it's a fun one. And Kirk, I work with Kirk on a lot of projects with this materials.
Yeah, so this material is probably less resistant to traffic. So it's one that you would want to kind of more look at. It can take some traffic, but it's not a heavy traffic material. But what's neat about it is, it can grow low and stay green and soft and really like almost like a cloud. But then in spring, summer, this eruption of flowers come up, and it's really pretty. And you can kind of work with that. You can mow some areas and let the edges flower, or like in this image, you just let it all flower and enjoy it while the flowers are there. And it's kind of neat because lawns don't bloom.
I always kind of love the thought that this is what happens when you're lazy and don't.
Here is another native ground cover that we use, and I'm sure like many of you have seen it a lot throughout the region. It is often used as a slope stabilization planting. Like it has similar characteristic as the dune sedge, that it's long and wispy, and it creates this very soft and wavy form, giving this whole open green space a very unique experience.
Right. So it's such a neat plant because, you know, it looks like it's windblown just the way it grows. It adds so much life to a slope or to a garden. One of the things about this red fescue, during the winter time, it does need a cutback and then a reseed, and that kind of regenerates the plant. A lot like, you know, what we talked about, those roses, you cut them back and then you get a fresh plant in the spring. Same thing with this, cut it back hard, reseed certain areas, and spring comes around and it's off and running, and for the rest of the year, it looks amazing.
Right, and being in the climate zone that we are in, oftentimes ornamental grasses, like when you giving it a hard cut back, you start seeing new growth right away. Like every day, you know, the new blades start gain more inches, and that's the advantage of our climate here. So you won't be looking at a bare spot for, you know, 3 months, like other parts of the country.
And lawn freedom.
And lawn freedom, of course. And so the idea of lawn free, like nothing that looks like lawn at all, at first, when you think about it, it's kind of like a shocking thing. It can be controversial in a way, but really, I mean, if I can name some of the garden style to you, you would, you know, be surprised. Like, oh yeah, that's right. I mean, these, you know, gardens, they didn't have lawn. Like, for example, you know, the English cottage or the French Provence, or even the prairie style in the Great Plain of United States. Those gardens, they are rich in textures and forms and colors and changes throughout the year. And so, you know, why not explore this? It will give you so much more enjoyment. And really, you know, we can have our own California cottage style or California romantic style.
Mm-hmm.
You name
So,
it.
one of the things that I don't know if many of you thought about, but a lawn is like a desert. There's no life. There's no bugs. There's no birds, butterflies, lizards. There's nothing going on in there. And incorporating, you know, a mixture of different plants and throughout the different seasons of the year, there's always something happening. There's always life participating in your garden. It's a true habitat that, especially a California native one, you're going to be feeding, you know, your local birds that will come and visit your yard. And I find it interesting, you know, throughout the whole year, just to go out and see what's enjoying my garden.
This is really something for Kirk to say something like that he can go out into a space and actually sit back and be filled with wonder. Because if there is gravel that is unraked or a lawn with imperfections, the man does not rest. So that's really saying something.
Wow.
So if you're wondering which aesthetic might appeal with your architecture and your lifestyle, we do have a quiz on our website, and I think Cassie might be able to drop that into the chat. But it will ask you, yay! It will ask you a series of questions and pop out with a good match for you. So that might be fun and it allows you to take it a few times if you want to experiment. Do you have questions about the aesthetics of a lawn replacement?
I have a question. Have you had any experience with Carapia as a lawn replacement?
I have not used Carapia, so Isara, do you know about it?
I have seen Carapias in gardens and seen it used in various environments. And I know like Cassie had wrote an extensive information about this material, that there is a disadvantage to it. And I think she may have put something in the chat. I'm not
I was
sure.
just getting the spelling right, so everybody knew what it was. Yeah, so just real quickly, I think the main part of that article was more fun and conflict than anything. It was the research and development team was claiming that it was a native, and as the former board president at the time of the Theodore Payne Foundation, I was trying to help people get the information correct. And so that's really just the main story about that. But I have seen it in a few different environments, and in many of those environments, I have not seen it thrive the way I believe the expectation might be for a lawn alternative.
Right, and you might want to do a little bit further research on the water requirement and the microclimate that it can thrive on. Some plants, especially ground cover, if it's not used properly, it can either suffer or it can take over your garden. And so having a good understanding will save you from a lot of headache later.
Having a chance to go to a client site or garden tour where it is there live and in person can make a big difference too. From a marketing standpoint, we see this with the synthetic turfs as well. If there is a commercial interest behind promoting a particular solution, there tends to be a lot of information out there that may or may not fit with your experience, and being in an area where you can see and touch and smell and see how something's performing in sun and shade can make a big difference there too.
Right, or even speaking to the homeowners or garden, designers, and get to understand their experience with materials. That will be a very, very helpful way of understanding the plants.
Great point, Isara. Do we have more questions about the aesthetics, or should we move on to what life is like?
I have a quick question. So say you went with the lawn-free example like you showed there.
Mhm.
What is, and I know every home is different and all the plants are different, but what is the maintenance kind of schedule for something like that?
Well, typically the maintenance, the mowing maintenance goes down quite significantly. And then, it's that time can be allocated to things that are more important to people who care about their gardens. So I think the overall thing is that your yard is getting, better care, and hopefully whoever's doing that maintenance, they know more about the garden than just mowing. So having that extra time to, deadhead, define plants, clean gutters, take real care of the garden. I think, that's a real, savings for the garden.
It's also
that makes
really a
sense.
quality of life issue. I think I'm thinking of the gentleman who was just sitting in or the garden with the two ladies walking through with all that vitality, all that vibrance. And the husband maintains that garden, and he'll say he went from, mowing with his headphones on and sucking down, mower fumes, to walking around deadheading and building would-be houses. And it's just an entirely different form of work in the garden, as opposed to maintaining a lawn as well.
Right, you really get to know your plants, and you'll find out that, for example, so many of our gardens, we use native perennials that require, deadheading after the flowering season, and maybe structural pruning once a year. And so weeding would be heavily during the first season after, the garden was planted. But after that, when all the plants are grown into each other and lessen the open area for weeds to come up, you start seeing less and less maintenance needed, like traditional lawn, or if you are doing topiary. So that type of gardens usually require heavy maintenance and produce a lot of yard waste and chemical, in addition to water requirement. And in this graphic here, showing going from traditional landscape with lawn to a sustainable native landscape, and this is put together by Garden in Santa Monica. This is like the data that they collected, and this has shown that a sustainable landscape with climate appropriate plants reduce a lot of resource waste and yard waste, and open up more opportunities for you to really enjoy the garden and get to know your garden.
And the city does maintain that data. So it's still a demonstration garden. It's not too far from Santa Monica College. And online, they have a full report of how much time they spend maintaining each garden, the turf grass garden. So it's a great little spot, and great data online as well.
Thank you.
I wonder if I might ask a question about the transition from a traditional lawn to, let's say, a dune sedge lawn. How do you do it?
So just like any, if you were to replace your lawn, so you would want to remove all the lawn, clean up the soil, get rid of any weeds or rhizomes or stolons from Bermuda grass, say, or all of that stuff. And so you would do that, you would get the irrigation installed. Typically we use a subsurface drip irrigation that's installed in a grid pattern. And then with the dune sedge, we use plugs, and they're spaced out at about 1 foot on center. And
Wow.
in the beginning, it kind of looks like hair club for men. It just looks like a rice paddy. And it takes about a month for it to kind of get established. And then it starts to slowly come together. And, 3 to 5 months, it's pretty well on its way. And you'll have the starts of a lawn. Typically in the beginning, Isara was saying, 3 to 5 mowings, but just like anything else, like in the beginning, if you do a little more trimming, it'll promote some of that lateral growth, which you want it to do in the beginning. So it'll fill in a little quicker. And, you know, then from there, you kind of, however you like it to look, you know, if you want it to be longer, let it grow. You could go months without mowing it. Or if you like it really tight, then, you know, trim it back.
Right.
Also, I wanted to emphasize that, you know, when you remove your old lawn, it's very important to make sure that you get a lot of the roots of the weedy lawn out. That will save you a lot of time from having to weed your new, you know, dune sedge lawn later. So preparation of your soil is very important.
Right, right. There are so many weeds. I mean, this rain has produced unbelievable weeds. I've never seen them so profusely everywhere.
Right. And so one of the things that we do while it's open in the beginning, because it's 1 foot on center, there's a lot of open soil. We do use like a fine bark mulch that's only about, it's probably only about an inch deep. So
Okay.
the sedge will still grow through it, but it does keep down some of the weeds. There, you know, that's one of the things, the important things in that beginning stage is if there is weeds coming up, they're pretty easy to identify, and you want to just go in and, you know, pick those out, you know, in the beginning. It's pretty critical.
Right. And you'll find that mulching your garden will help suppress weeds very, very nicely.
And help retain hydration as well.
Absolutely. Keeping the root zone, keeping the moisture in the root zone for the plants to thrive and establish.
So, kind of going back to what it's like to live with the lawn, we talk a lot about the return on investment calculation in terms of what you save in maintenance, just because it helps people picture really how life changes too. I mean, just that example of applying mulch instead of applying, you know, pesticide, herbicide, fertilizer. It's a much more pleasant experience, and it's definitely healthier as well for any human or pet around that area, let alone, you know, just the environment as well.
Concerning clearing out the old grass, it seems that even if you think you've got it out, it's really hard to get out all of the
Rhizome.
roots. That, yes, really hard. Have you any secrets to doing that without using Roundup and other such products, toxic products?
So
Actually, the LA Times interviewed Kirk about that not too long ago. Cassie, do you happen to have the link to that article handy?
I'll look for it. And so you guys continue, and I'll get it in the chat as soon as I find it.
Interrupt Kirk. I just know that article has detail there too.
right. So how we do it at FormLA is we don't use Roundup. We spend a little extra time on that. And what we do is we'll sod cut the sod out, and generally we'll take it pretty deep, maybe a couple inches thick, and then that will get, you know, all of the green parts of the grass, a lot of the roots, and then this is where the time comes in. We'll take the rototiller, we'll till that area, and then, you know, rake out the rhizomes, and then we'll do that process like, you know, 4 to 5 times until, or until when we're doing it, we're not seeing those white rhizomes. And typically it's not like kikuyu grass or, you know, St. Augustine that we're looking for. Typically those ones are kind of easy to get. It's the Bermuda grass is the one that can be a real problem. And, you know, you guys probably all know any one of those little nodules on a rhizome can create a plant. So, you know, the more you do it, the better. You just have to kind of keep sifting through it. And, you know, in all likelihood, you probably won't get it all, but if you do a good job, you can get a lot of it. And we've had pretty good success at it.
Right. There is one method that I have read a lot in the internet or on different garden clubs, is that people will do the term they use is the I guess like cardboard mulch or
Sheet mulching.
sheet mulching. And so we have done that and found that sometimes grass or weed will still grow through it. And also one disadvantage of doing that is that it takes a long time for the cardboard to break down, and sometimes the heat from the sun, it starts to solarizing your soil, killing a lot of artificial you know, benefits that in your soil already. So it's almost like you have to restart adding more nutrients back after, you know, your soil has been solarized. So doing the type of soil preparation that Kirk had just mentioned is, I know it sounds like a very intensive process, but it will save you a lot of headache. And then the second thing I want to point out about using drought-tolerant plants that thrive in your environment is that once this ground cover grow into each other, there will be less and less space for you know, weeds to come up. And when you reduce down your water usage, you're going to see that, you know, there won't be excess water for these plants to thrive. And instead, you'll see this drought-tolerant ground cover that you intend to use. Okay.
Right.
Should we speak a little bit about living with synthetics?
Yeah, so living with synthetics, that's and you know, we have used some synthetic turf in some of our projects for various reasons that you know, and we had experience with synthetic turf, and it's made out of petroleum-based products that create reactions from the heat. So during the hottest day of the year, you can smell it. You know, you want your garden to smell like, you know, flowers and, you know, and herbs, but instead you feel like you are in a tire shop. And you know, is this the type of environment that you want to create for yourself or your kids? You know. So I think, you know, we have other alternatives that will be a better solution for you.
And the smell is just one of the yucky things. Kirk had some insights there that are also pretty profound.
I think that, you know, there's just too many negatives about synthetic turf. You know, just the water savings is great, but like the heat island, the petroleum, the plastic, you know, fire, all of these things, you know, just, and also, you know, when it breaks down, when it gets matted down, I think you've all seen old synthetic lawns that are just, they look like flattened. The color changes. What do we do about this? You have to roll up a whole, you know, 1,000 square feet of plastic and then take it to the dump. It's just, it's horrible.
I think when you first mentioned the bacteria to me, I was ready to roll up all of the synthetic turf I walk by with my dog.
Right.
Yeah, and also I want to add to that is that even petroleum-based materials, you know, will break down quite fast with the heat, with the extreme heat, and so you have, you know, the these things that weave into each other start coming apart, and with the heavy rain that we experienced this, you know, winter, it can carry those broken pieces down the drain and into the ocean. Like even if you live miles away from the ocean, this material can get washed into, you know, our beautiful beaches. And being a Californian myself, I love my beaches and I would do anything to protect it. Yeah. And so going back to, you know, lawn alternatives, materials, you know, the end result is a healthier environment that, you know, you, yourself, your kids, and your pets can really, really enjoy. You know, you can be out there and know that it's pesticide free of pesticide or chemical or the heat. You know, you'll find much more enjoyment and not having to really think about, you know, when you can be out there or when you cannot be out there.
So the environment of having a lawn compared to a synthetic lawn, you know, walking across it, it can be really cool and enjoyable. You know, a synthetic lawn, you know, during the summertime, be hot and, you know, not comfortable. I feel like the garden should be a place, a sanctuary, somewhere where you can be comfortable and, you know, your happy place. And I think that, you know, a natural lawn alternative is the way to go.
Well, there's so many, I think you hinted at this earlier, Kirk, too, where we might not even attribute it to the synthetic or the turf grass until something different exists. But for example, if you have a puppy with itchy paws that they're always biting, or kids that are always coughing, that's not always related to the foliage, although the foliage tends to take the blame. A lot of times that can be a chemical that is associated either with the synthetic turf or the fertilizer or the pesticide. So you can see a lot of health issues kind of go by the wayside between the materials themselves and then also the lifestyle that having those materials requires of people.
Definitely. You know, that those grasses continually grow and they're getting cleaned, either water or just the actual growth and cutting it. Something like the plastic lawn, you know, it's always there, you know, and it's not getting cleaned off. It's completely stagnant. So it can be a scary environment.
Right. It also kind of contradicts the idea that you don't need to water it because you still actually do to kind of hose it down to wash off if you use it as a dog run or something, you still have dog urine or, feces on it. So it's kind of defeats the whole idea of water conservation.
Isara, you've designed a lot of gardens for kids too, and I know you've had experience with lawns versus lawn-free environments.
Yeah, and what I found is quite interesting because we would put in a garden that has both, an open space like lawn for the kids to play balls, and trails and shrubs and flowers and berms and change in elevation and bridges. And we found out that from the parents, they said that the kids just love the trails. They spend so much time exploring the flowers, the shrubs, and seeing all the different activities going on, and spend less time on the lawn itself. And so never underestimate a lawnless garden as a part of your child development and learning, and even adult. Well, we learn new things every day just in the garden.
Right. So like what's really neat is that, like, this image here, these guys are enjoying their outdoor room. They can completely surround themselves with a theme, a garden theme, and it creates this space that can be, whimsical, or, it can be a lot of different things. But having plants in the garden creates a lot of interest, a lot of fun throughout the year, and it could be a really neat thing. A lot funner than say a lawn. It's pretty boring, but it's a neat thing to do, and it sounds like all of you guys really enjoy plants and gardens. So let's do some planting.
Yeah, and like the plants, like in the last picture, how it kind of create almost like a room. So you can use plants to create different rooms within the garden, just like that last project that we looked at, and that was the whole concept of it.
Good point, Isara. So I'm just realizing it's just shy of 8 o'clock, and I'm sure some of you reserved just this amount of time. So you want to be sure that you get your questions asked. Maybe we should pause and take questions from here, Mary? Do you have a
Sure,
question?
we can go ahead and do questions.
Okay.
Evidence that Trump knew, and that's where we are. Trump knew, and he lied by saying spend more money to fight this thing, and he knew it wasn't for that, and it was false. Federal wire fraud, and it's just significant.
I'm not sure that I caught that. Mary, did you catch the question?
No, I didn't catch that question. Maybe they can repeat if that was a question.
I think that was an unmuted accident.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that as well. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions on segments 1 and 2, go ahead and you can put them in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and ask directly.
No questions? Really?
Wow.
No, we have a question. Are you guys using Netafim in the sedge?
We are using Netafim, and typically we do that in a grid pattern, and about a foot apart, and the spacing of the emitters are typically about a foot, and each emitter is 0.9 gallons per hour. Okay. And the Netafim product has been proven to work really well. One of the things that it has in each emitter, there's like a little flapper that every time it turns on, it flushes out the little emitter. And then it also has like a copper that's mixed into the emitter, and it stops root growth into the emitter, so it can be buried, so you don't see that drip tubing in the garden, and it's worked really well for us.
Thank you.
It looks like we have a couple of questions in the chat. So the first one has to do with gophers and moles. It said, when we put in our lawn, we then had moles or gophers come and pretty much destroy it. Do you know how those types of critters react to the installation of native plants? Kirk, can you go into some of the ideas that we had incorporated into projects with gophers?
So typically in our gardens that are, close to the hills, or in some cases, in the city, there's gophers. A lot of times we plant the small perennials and shrub material in gopher baskets, and that seems to work pretty good. And we've had good success with that. With meadows, and we tried doing some wiring underneath, like 4 to 5 inches down, and thinking that it would prevent the gophers. Well, it did prevent the gophers, but what we didn't anticipate was when we did have to do some weeding, we couldn't get dig down deep enough to get the rhizomes out. So we kind of shied away from doing the mesh underneath meadows. That's kind of our experience.
There is one more question in the chat. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, so
Cassie, can you see it for some reason?
Yeah, I can see it. So what do you suggest for an area that's too shady, that is too shady part of the year for a lawn alternative?
Dara, you want to do that?
yeah, so for example, the sand dune sedge is a plant that exists all throughout different environment, from the sea level up to I believe like 5,000 feet elevation. So it can handle varieties of microclimates and exposures. And in our experience, that in a shady area, that sometime it would get blasted with the afternoon sun, but throughout the day it's shady. The sedge will grow a little slower, but eventually it will catch up. It has been a very a flexible plant. It's just that the growth rate will be slower than those that were planted in the sunny area. And then another materials that I think Kirk had taught me was the red fescue, that it needs a little bit more water and can handle shade, especially if you are inland, where you get a lot of dry heat during the summertime. Providing some shade for the red fescue is actually necessary.
Another thing you can always do is, like, if it was so shady that nothing really grows, or some things don't grow, using something that's not a lawn substitute in those areas, something that can grow like a perennial or shrub, switch it up, kind of create islands, use the material where it likes to grow, and then, switch up the design to suit your microclimate, is one of the things that, why fight it? Work with that situation and design appropriate plants that will take that deep shade. Might be a good way to go.
Right, work with the natural system is one way of providing you with success.
It looks like we don't have any more questions in the chat. We could move on to speaking to wildfire readiness, realizing that it is 8 o'clock and we might lose a few people. Isara and Kirk, can you stay on?
Yeah.
Sure.
Awesome. So there are a few new things coming down the pike. Within the next year, some regulations will be going into effect that require the creation of a zone 0 in high and very high fire hazard areas, fire severity areas. And maybe some of you have noticed this, but the fire hazard severity areas have been expanded this year as well. So people who have never received fire-related notices are now receiving them. So we just wanted to make anyone who might be thinking of a lawn replacement or any kind of renovation in the Palisades area aware of what's coming. Isara, you've been designing zone 0s. Do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, to describe a zone 0, so basically it's that first 5 feet from your home and around your home that you keep it free of combustible materials. And again, you don't, it sounds kind of, ugly when you just have this ring of nothing around your home, but you can really design or incorporate it into the layout of your garden, and using various materials that have been studied and accepted by the whole zone 0 and fire defensible space design.
We
Yeah.
hit on this a little bit earlier, but one of those things is not synthetic lawn. Kirk, did you want to build upon that?
Well, the synthetic lawn, we talked about it earlier, petroleum based, and the embers can come from far away, come into this synthetic lawn and start to burn them. And it can create a smoldering fire, and it can be potentially disastrous to your home.
They've been known to light up actually just from the refraction off of a window, depending on where they're placed. And just a caution, there are people marketing synthetic lawns as fire resistant, but no petroleum product is going to be truly fire resistant. It just burns slow and burns hot. And the off-gassing from this is pretty significant. So when you look at the air quality impacts of burning chaparral or forest, that is much less harmful to human life and wildlife than when it starts burning what's inside of our homes, or like a synthetic turf petroleum-based product. Isara, you have so much experience with what is allowable in this space also.
Right, that's correct. Like what I mentioned before, with the right design, you can incorporate it incorporate different materials to make it look natural and save your home as well. Like, for example, rocks and pavers, or even potted plants. And one of the things I want to point out, all plants will eventually burn, but well hydrated plant materials will burn slower and won't produce toxic gas like synthetic turf. And then when you have a mature tree right next to your home, if it is well hydrated and also well maintained, it can actually serve as an ember blocker, which will prevent ember from landing on your home. So there are these features that you can consider and incorporate into the design, so that it would look harmonious with the style of your house and the garden.
That's actually, sorry, I was trying to keep it on that, because what I just realized, to your point earlier, Isara, about the curb appeal, is that this was the home that was on the Pacific Palisades garden tour, I think, in our most recent engagement with you guys. And not only did nobody think the stone and the concrete looked odd, it actually generated a lot of compliments, and it's really functional for helping to get around the property as well.
Absolutely.
So I think that's all we had. Did anybody have more questions as it relates to fire readiness or any of the content of the presentation?
I was just going to mention that my house in Santa Barbara burned to the landscaping. They were fighting the tea fire in 2008 from my living room, and my entire garden burned to the ground. And when I talked to the insurance company, they were allotting me a certain amount to replace, but it was just amazing how most everything came back. And so the resilience of a really well thought out garden is, I was really happy that we had put so much time into originally in 98, putting the garden together. So it turned out to be successful even after the devastation of a fire. So I can't even imagine putting artificial turf down. I mean, every time I see it now, it just makes me cringe.
Right. Well, that's an amazing story to for one, to see it burn, and to live through that experience must have been horrific.
Yeah.
But then
Well,
to see it come back, it's kind of
it was amazing
as well.
Yeah. Even the oak trees, which we lost some of them, but some of them came back.
Right. The
Yeah,
oak trees are amazing ember blockers. They're one of the you're a great defense.
Yeah.
Right. And also, Deanne, thank you for sharing your story. And one thing I want to point out about choosing the right plants, after it burned on top, you'll start seeing the growth coming up right away. And it's an assurance that the root zone is still intact and it's holding up soil. So the next rain comes, there's something that's holding your slope in place, preventing erosion. So it's that, it can pretty much address two different concerns: fire, mudslide.
Right.
Well, we realize we've kept you an extra 10 minutes, and we're so grateful for your time and so grateful. Deanne, thank you for sharing that experience.
Thank you. Thank you. This has really been enjoyable.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for this opportunity. I hope you enjoy our presentation and find it inspirational.
And if you want to come see us next Saturday, come see us in Santa Monica.
Yes, I did send out the reminder, and in the reminder, there is a link.
Oh, good.
to the LA Conservancy website and also a link directly to the FormLA example that they talked about, the urban wildlife.
And
So
I
that's
just-
right there in Santa Monica.
And Mary, I just wanted to mention that you need to make a reservation to go on that tour and buy tickets online. So
Yes,
there-
you do. But
so you-
there, on the link, it has the ticket information and
Okay.
each one is $10 if you're not a member of the
Member.
Conservancy.
Yeah, this garden has a lot of really neat sustainable ideas that a lot of people can take away, and some things you can see, some things you can't. So hope to see you all so we can share some cool ideas about the garden.
And
Yeah.
actually has 2 different lawn alternatives. And the homeowners are kind of continually evolving it. So if you have seen us in this garden before, come back because Hilda is always adding new things.
Oh, good. It's good to know.
Yeah, that should be a good tour. There's 4 properties in Santa Monica. People want to see that one and additional ones. There's 4 gardens that are in Santa Monica, and then they have other ones also. So you
Oh.
can use the links in the reminder that I sent today in the afternoon to check out, the different things so you can determine where you'd like to go. And I'd like to thank FormLA and Kirk and Isara and Gabrielle and Cassie for a wonderful presentation this evening. It's been really wonderful. And if anyone has any more questions, now is the time before they vanish from the screen.
It looks like there is something in the chat. Just Cassie.
Let's see. Thank you, everyone. What a pleasure to share some time with your group. Garden on.
Great.
And Chris Griswold, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
everyone.
And then next month, we're gonna have Mike Atkinson from the Atkinson Plumeria people that are down in San Diego. So that will be a wonderful presentation. Danielle, I can send you the link if you'd like to share it with your
Be
group
generous
there.
so much. I
You're,
appreciate it.
you're welcome to join us. Our meetings are open to the public.
Awesome.
Alrighty.
All right, everyone. So if there's
Great.
no further questions
you.
or concerns, we'll see you next month on June 5th at 7 p.m.
Thank
And
you.
we'll send out the notices. And if there's other things to let you know about, we will let you know about those as well. Okay.
Bye, Mary.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you.
All
everyone.
right. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night, everyone.